let's talk about the fact that you're running for office and you're running for office as a Republican, but you on your timeline you are a never Trump Republican. It's funny that you're a never Trump Republican because most of my audience is a never Hillary Democrat. So I mean, what you don't have to tell us who you're gonna vote for, but like, what are you gonna do, man? Like, you're stuck between a rock and a worse place. Like, tell us about this experience you have in this party being sufficiently woke, realizing that there's some stuff going on that black people have been complaining about, that you see is real, and you're dead smack in a party that is in North Carolina at that,
Right.
that doesn't believe it. Like, how does that work for you?
It's hard, man. Look, when I grew up in Virginia Beach. It's a military and tourist town. That's what
Hmm.
Virginia Beach is about. So the Republican Party up there is very different from what I had, down here. I grew up in a majority minority neighborhood. Several of my black classmates were also Republicans because they had parents in the military, grew up as Reagan babies. That was kind of the thing. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So that was it's a very small L libertarian focus,
Hmm.
size and scope of government, amount of taxes, stuff like that. I came down here and there's a lot more of a social component to it.
Hmm.
You've got, frankly, a lot of, especially now you could tell with Trump, a lot of racists in the party. And that's been tough for me to deal with. I used to be the vice chairman for the Wake County Republican Party years ago, and they kicked me out because they said I was too liberal. So that happened back in '05. And I was done with politics. I just said to hell with it. I'm not going to bother doing anything in the political arena. Focused on getting my college degree, eventually went to law school. And it was something where, to be honest with you, Mitt Romney, to me, kind of restored my faith in what the Republican Party was about. Because even though people got on him for being out of touch and being rich and everything else, he focused on what republicanism was to me. The size and scope of government. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Not let's go and fight, the latest abortion battle or lock up more black people or anything like that.
Greg,
And then
Mitt Romney, Greg, man, okay, go ahead. Let me leave you alone. Go ahead.
no, you're good. You're
Okay,
good.
well,
I can
actually,
talk
let me
about
throw this out here for you because you brought this to my attention on your timeline. Follow this guy on Twitter. He's got some great stuff. It's amazing to me that the one thing Mitt Romney was right about, he's wrong about everything else. Everything else he's absolutely wrong about. But the one thing he was right about is the role that Russia is playing in geopolitics right now. I mean, he called
Yes.
it like 2012, and everybody laughed. I laughed him to scorn, man. I'm rolling on the floor literally because I'm like, where's this dude coming from? But he was spot on, even if not from Russia being such the huge aggressor to being Russia is just front and center in our calculus right now. Did you believe him when he said that in 2012? What did you think when you heard him say it? And now what do you think in hindsight?
It was one of those things where it's like he must know something that I don't, because of
Hmm.
course I didn't see it in the media or anything. But then when Russia invaded Ukraine, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
all that stuff kind of comes back to mind. And then now we've got the latest stuff with them, being involved with hacking Hillary's emails and all that. So he was definitely right. But at the
Yeah.
time I was kind of giving him a whole, maybe he's getting something in the foreign intelligence briefings they give presidential candidates that I'm not privy to. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I know. I was joking with my dude Michael Brooks from the Majority Report. I'm like, he must. It could be that the Mormon Church has the best intelligence agency in the world, and we just don't know about it. I'm going to stand by that because that's a much more amazing and funny story. Let's talk about you
It's
as
the
a
Mormon mafia, man.
man. There's something they know what they're doing because he was spot on with that. Let's talk about you as a candidate and your race. I haven't talked to any candidates in a long time. Like I cut off talking to candidates at least like 3 months ago. But I want to talk to you as an individual, as a person, and I have you here, so I would not have you here and not talk about your campaign. Some of the issues that you raised is that you want to raise the age. North Carolina is one of only 5 states who automatically treat every 17-year-old as an adult for prosecution, and you want to tackle that head on. Give me like 30 seconds about why.
Well, I'm gonna say not only that, we're the only state that treats all 16-year-olds as adults too.
Wow.
The fact is we're wrecking kids' lives with criminal charges. If you're in a class and you got your cell phone out, teacher tells you to put it away and you don't go to detention anymore. They call a student resource officer, an
Yep.
SRO, who is a sworn policeman, and you get an adult disorderly conduct charge. You end up in the same courtroom with the drug dealers and everything else.
Wow.
So it's really, the school to prison pipeline here is real, and it's terrible, and it's documented, and I can go on all day about it.
You also say, and oh, well, we'll talk about that in a second, because you let me read some of your positions, and I was floored by the fact that you pay attention to the issues that disproportionately hit African Americans. But not only that you paid attention, but you were striking it at the core. It's one thing to talk about it, but you were striking at the very issues that could reverse some of the to school to prison pipeline. The second one here that I want to talk about is decriminalization of marijuana. Talking about the amount of money that the government spends, but also the disproportionate effect that it has on minorities. Talk about that for me.
So, I mean, it's something where the government is using that charge to raise money. You know, you look at the top 15 charges that North Carolina issued in last year. All right. Out of your top 10, 8 of them are traffic tickets, because that's easy money for everybody. Number 8 is possession of drug paraphernalia. Number 14 is possession of less than half an ounce of marijuana. We bring in roughly $8 to $10 million a year, depending on the volume, just from those cases, because by getting charged, even if you ultimately get it dismissed, you're going to pay $180 in court costs as part of a deferred prosecution agreement where they'll dismiss it at the end. You're going to pay a $250 fee to go take your drug classes. And that's money all flowing to the government. It's outrageous. So what's happened is they want to do government on the cheap. They don't want to do it through taxes. They want to do it through court costs, because the assumption is if you're charged, you're guilty. That's what the public tends to believe.
Yeah.
So they'll stop
unless you're
people.
Ammon Bundy and his crew, but go ahead.
Well, you know, to be honest with you, a lot of people that thought just by him getting charged, he was guilty too. But especially if you're black or brown, that's absolutely true. You know, the presumption is that the police officers would only charge you if they actually had evidence of a crime. So a lot of times what will happen, especially here in Durham, is that when someone is pulled over for a traffic stop, a huge amount of the time the officer will walk up, the window is rolled down, and he'll go, based on my training and experience, it smells like you've had weed in the car. Would you mind if I searched?
Right.
And they'll end up searching the car. Sometimes they'll find something, sometimes they'll don't. But what really blows my mind is that if your followers go to a website, it's called opendatapolicingnc.com. We have compiled roughly 10 years worth of traffic data. And by we, I mean the people that run the site. I don't have any affiliation with it. But they've compiled every single traffic stop from the past 10 years. The officer, the race of the driver, whether or not there was a search, whether or not that search was by consent or by probable cause. And what you see is that people of color are disproportionately targeted for stops and for searches, even though the likelihood of actually finding something illegal is no different between the races.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just something that the police are trained to do. It got so bad in Durham that the Durham City Council just 2 years ago adopted a policy where when police do a consent search, the driver has to actually sign a form giving consent. Because what happened is officers were lying about whether or not consent was given, and you'd have defendants come into court with cell phone video or whatever else proving that they had not consented to the search. You know, so it's bad. And the reason why it is so bad is because they're using it to raise revenue. That is part of the government's priority, is bringing in money through these tickets.
Wow. The other thing that you're addressing is body cameras for police with presumptive access. The use of dash cams is this is from your site. You said the use of dash cams fundamentally changed how police conducted traffic stops, and you want them to keep these videos. I'm sorry. You brought up the fact that the bill was passed in June, and I spoke about that bill that basically took it out of the public domain. It's not something that can be accessed through a freedom of information request in North Carolina anymore. And you want to attack that head on. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so what happened was at the end of June, you know, it used to be that dash cams were considered public records. As body cams came into being, there was an open question as to whether or not they would also be public records. And based on how North Carolina's Public Records Act was written, it's pretty obvious that they should have been. Well, what happened was the lobbyists for the police associations didn't like that, wrote a bill that they introduced near the end of the legislative session this year, as everyone is focusing on, you know, fallout from House Bill 2, our bathroom bill, all that type of stuff. And it passed overwhelmingly. Republicans and Democrats both voted in favor of it, where body cams and dash cams and all other police video, doesn't matter what it is, that has all now been removed from the Public Records Act. They have also created this new court process where it's very messy, it's very expensive, and the way they've written the rules of law, there's no way to really get the video anymore. You
Yeah.
know, what happens is you have to ask the police to give it to you. They're going to tell you no, and you appeal. And when the court looks at the appeal, they can only release the video if the police, the magic phrase is, abused their discretion in denying it. And in legalese, an abuse of discretion standard gives a lot of deference to the people that made the initial decision. Basically, as long as the police think about it before they deny it, they haven't abused their discretion.
Wow.
So what you're going to see happen this coming year is that video is not going to come out.
Absolutely.
You know, you look at the Keith Scott killing in Charlotte. Technically, the Charlotte police violated that law to release the full tapes. So it's something where, as taxpayers, as attorneys, as anyone who wants the video, the system is now in place to block us from getting it. But from the standpoint of the police, when they want to release the video, they're just going to violate the law and they're not going to have any repercussions for it.
Wow.
And the fact is, the Democrat that I'm running against voted in favor of that.
Wow. So this is your platform. You're a stand-up guy, even though you're a Republican. But one thing I've noticed, one thing that's true, right? That's been proven true on my show is that your party affiliation doesn't mean jack, right? Because we've got some Democrats who voted for the bill that you just talked about in June. You also had Democrats who voted for, was it HB2 or was it HB3?
Yep.
The transgender, the HB2, the Transgender Discrimination Act. So you have plenty of Democrats who are on the wrong side of a lot of issues. And, listening to you talk on social justice issues, you're on the right side of those issues. If I can say so myself, you're definitely stand-up guy in that regard. Just a comment. Somebody said that in the chat room, they mentioned that you've done some pro bono work for activists who have been arrested and prosecuted. So your reputation precedes you. I'm pretty sure if we start talking about economics, we're going to find something that we're going to disagree on and run each other off the camera. But that's not what I want to do tonight. Greg, thanks so much for joining me, man. I want you to get the last word. Tell my audience anything that you want them to know and tell them how they can get up with you.
Look, I just want y'all to follow me on Twitter. It's at Greg, Greg _Doucette, Doucette. They've already tweeted me out, Ben and his folks. So I just appreciate y'all having me on. You know, when I filed, I made a commitment that I was going to reach out to people that aren't part of the Republican base, because you can't grow a church if you're already, only preaching to the converted.
Hey.
So, if we agree on criminal justice, that's a start. Let's have a drink and work from there.
That's a start. We can have a drink and work from there. And I tell you what, after about the fourth scotch, even though I don't drink anymore, that's when we'll start talking about economics. And I promise you, we won't be friends anymore. But until that point, man, you got my support. I like what you're doing. Folks, go to Twitter and follow him. Listen to what he has to say on social justice and just completely ignore anything he says about Mitt Romney and Republicans and economics. Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Take care.